I'm Ted Meyer in Los Angeles, California, and I am with
Charis Lindrooth in Pennsylvania.
nice
Yes.
plant behind you. It seems very appropriate.
I love plants.
Okay, so you've been diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are with your diagnosis and how you're handling it so far?
Yeah. So it was a long time coming to get my diagnosis, about 5 years after I started some early symptoms. And now when I look back on it, I think I've had symptoms for 20, 30 years to some degree. I've put the pieces together over time and realized what was going on. Um, And that period of time where I was waiting for my diagnosis was really scary, and overwhelming. And I would get up at night sometimes and just kind of wander around the house in angst about whether I was going to be alive in a year because I knew something wasn't right. And everybody, neurologists, all the doctors were telling me everything looked great. So it wasn't until 2 years ago that I met with a doctor at Temple University, and together actually, I have a medical background. And so together we kind of went through all the possibilities, and Parkinson's was on that list. And she prescribed a DAT scan, which is imaging of the brain and the dopamine uptake in the brain. And so I had that test done in November, 2 years ago. And I remember lying in that scan. It was kind of a dark, cloudy, rainy day. And I was just doing this visualization of my brain. And I saw like these beautiful northern lights in my brain, like beautiful shades of green. I could only say something great was happening in there, right? Something wonderful was happening in there. So, in spite of the fact that I got this beautiful message, I knew that I had Parkinson's. And sure enough, an hour later, there was an email in my inbox with a rough gut punch of this is not a normal DAT scan.
Yeah.
This has you have new neurodegeneration. It was like some tough language for a patient to be reading before their doctor kind of filtered it for them. But
I'm always amazed when they'll send you a test result that we're not used to reading, you know?
yeah, I mean, like I said, I have a little bit of a medical background, so I was familiar with the language and I knew what they were talking about. And I called my doctor right away, and she's like, geez, my patients don't usually call me before I even see the test. But that sounds all lighthearted. It really wasn't a lighthearted moment at all. It was devastating. Even though I had already come to my husband said to me, you've been telling me for 2 years that you have Parkinson's. You've mentioned it, but I'd talked myself out of it, or I had downplayed the seriousness of it. I don't think I really fathomed all that the disease encompasses. Tremor, is no fun, don't get me wrong, but the it's really the least of the concerns. Balance is an issue, digestion is an issue, heart rate is an issue, the interplay of your autonomic nervous system with your entire body gets dysregulated. Your skin, your bladder, like there's neuropathy in my feet, lots of pain, joint pains, and an incredible, overwhelming desire to lie down and hold as still as possible. There's a really wonderful foundation for Parkinson's called the Davis Phinney Foundation. And I love that foundation. I support it wholeheartedly because it really focuses on living your best life now. I couldn't read about it. I couldn't even read Davis Phinney. I couldn't even open that foundation. Like, I didn't want to hear anything. I didn't want to go to boxing. There's Parkinson's boxing classes. I didn't want to see people with Parkinson's to see where I might end up. I was very afraid. And then I don't even know what triggered the change other than the fact that tend to be an outgoing person. I've been a teacher lifelong in various fields, and I just wanted to inform myself and then share that news because I got mad before I got friendly about it. And the mad was, hey, there's not enough support. There's not enough encouragement. There's not enough. I don't think there's enough research on what we can do besides medication for people with Parkinson's.
You've become a medicinal herbalist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as you're sitting there with a giant plant behind you,
Yeah.
why don't you tell us how that transition happened, and also how do you mix that stuff with traditional medicine?
That's a great question. The serendipity of it is that I was an herbalist and a chiropractor since the 90s, well before my diagnosis. 15 years ago, I began to study, natural ways to support brain health. And I actually developed an online course, which I still have, on keeping your brain brilliant. And it was really focused around preventing dementia and Alzheimer's. I felt like medication isn't enough, and maybe even not even helpful at all for some folks. And I wanted to give some alternatives, an herbal lifestyle, diet, all of that put together. So here I am studying this, being the expert, not ever saying I'm an expert on it, really just sharing what I've learned, being like, I consider myself a scout more than an expert. And then I get my diagnosis. So initially I'm like, am I a big failure? Once I got a hold of myself and kind of came out of my depression, I have this treasure trove of information to turn to, as well as many other natural health practitioners that I have collaborated with. Dopamine is kind of a sexy topic right now, and ways we can support dopamine for the normal human being. But why can't we do that for somebody who is really struggling with low dopamine in a serious way, like somebody with a Parkinson's or Parkinson's-like diagnosis? Sure enough, huge benefits. One of the first things I started doing was cold plunge. And for me, that meant jumping into my stream at the bottom of my farm, not buying a big fancy refrigerator that I can put ice cubes in and sitting there for 30 minutes. No, no, no. Just a quick in and out.
You jump in the water and all of a sudden it like reboots you like a computer.
Well, the first thing that happens immediately is mood enhancement. And that's really, really important because your attitude is everything.
You sent me a link to a video that you posted on your birthday where you didn't really talk about yourself much. You wanted to tell your friends first that you were doing okay and an update, but tell them all these plants and medicinal things that they can do for themselves. Maybe you can talk about how this work has helped you build a community, and then in turn, how that has helped you through this.
My herbal community that I founded came together around COVID. Herbalists from all around the world putting our heads together and really helping people get through. I host many speakers on the community, and I teach myself. And then I get my gut punch, right? I get my diagnosis and I feel like quitting. I really resonate with anyone who struggles to, who ends up shutting themselves down. And that, look, chemically, that makes sense because low dopamine is associated with depression. What's the best remedy though? The best remedy is relationship, communication, sharing your gift. And for me, as I wander around at night wondering what's going wrong with me, I say, what do I want to leave the world with before I go?
A lot of times people don't understand that there can be an upside to having an illness. And
Yeah,
it seems like you're
no
probably
doubt.
in a position where you're better suited to build an international community and reach out with people because of the Parkinson's. Not that it's an even trade,
Yeah,
especially.
I mean, you might look at it as an initiation or, a mantle that was put on me. In a way, it lends authority to my talking on the topic, not because I'm a scientist studying it, but because I'm a human experiencing it.
You're not anti-Western medicine, are you? You're taking
No,
in your.
no. And I take a pharmaceutical medication in combination with the herbs that I take. I have a whole team of Western trained doctors.
Do you get any pushback from them?
Yeah, my first neurologist, he's very old school, and he really didn't want me to be on any sorts of L-Dopa, which I take Mucuna bean, which is an Ayurvedic plant called the velvet bean, and it's been used for thousands of years as a source of L-Dopa. treating Parkinson's-like conditions. There's a reason why I take the plant medicine versus the synthetic prescription drug, but he didn't want me on any L-DOPA. So at first, I was crying. That's my barometer. When I'm not doing enough for myself is when I cry. So I was crying and going through a period of time, and then I started on the Mucuna bean, and lo and behold, I was blooming. I was feeling fantastic. And I went to him and I told him I was taking this Mucuna bean, and of course he had no clue what I was talking about. And he wrote it down, and I came back to him 6 months later. He's like, "Did you know Mucuna bean is a source of L-DOPA?" And I was like, duh. Yeah. I mean, of course, I didn't mean to be demeaning, but of course I knew that. That's why I'm taking it. And he's like, "Well, I don't want you on that. I don't want you on that. I think you're too soon to be on that." But my next neurologist was very supportive. One of the things I've picked up is playing ping pong. So I've become a ping pong nut, and I've founded a local club at my community center. I go to, in Allentown, about half an hour from here, I go to another ping pong club that is very advanced. They whoop my tush every time I go. And I go and I'm challenging myself horrifically,
And
right?
how's your balance to play ping pong?
My balance is most challenging when I'm moving slowly. That's where I have trouble. But if I have some speed in what I'm doing, I mean, it doesn't mean I can't lose my balance. Sometimes I do, but it's usually not an issue.
Let's talk about your community that you've built. You've got your family,
Yeah.
you've got your kids, your husband, all these
Yeah.
people around the world that look to you for strength and guidance. And let's talk about how this community keeps you going.
I think everybody has a longing for a sense of life purpose. And I think a lot of that life purpose has to do with our connection with other human beings or animals. And some people feel like plants are beings as well. So whatever your definition of a being is, but that opening of love, and nothing can hold me back if I'm feeling loved and having people to love around me. And so whether it's my daughter or my spouse or my 86-year-old mother or my community that's online with people I've never actually met, and then I do meet them sometimes at a big event, it's so heart-filling, and it tells me why I'm here and what my purpose is. And I was in my life purpose before my diagnosis, but my diagnosis, like you said, it sort of catapulted me into a new level and a new understanding, and kind of a niche as well, because I'm really, really focused on brain health and neurological health.
Having a brother with Parkinson's, I'm more every time I shake or every
Yeah.
time and my dad had dementia. So every time I forget a word, I'm like, oh my God, it's coming.
Everybody does. It's very normal to forget words, but there are things you can do to protect yourself, protect your brain. At least start your fish oil if you don't want to do your cold plunge.
I might go through your website and decide to do all of it. Who knows? I'm not
Good.
against jumping in a cold shower. So
Good.
thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.